when it comes to humanitarian disasters. Let me remind you of what happened in Vanuatu, in the Tonga. Let's not forget our friends from Papua New Guinea, who are facing a terrible, terrible disaster. And even though competition and wars are coming back, everything that is connected to rising sea levels and climate change in general and civil security that is being challenged, these are challenges that we have in front of us. And no matter our political parties, no matter our own conviction, our populations want us to bring out results, which is why President Macron decided to send a jet, an A400M, from our overseas territory to get some humanitarian goods to Papua New Guinea. We have to make sure that we make these mechanisms more sustainable for the future. And you'll see in the future that very punctual decisions we made are going to become more sustainable and are going to become mechanisms. The second risk is selfishness, but selfishness used as a strategy. A strategy that is out in the open, and it relies on this principle. Considering there is increasing competition, let's not rely on partnerships anymore. And one country, because of its culture, will make sure never to give this up, and it is France on a very precise topic. It is the fight against terrorism, and I want to commend my predecessor, Florence Parly, who is in the room. The 2015 terrorist attack, the fight against terrorism in the Levant, in the Sahel, in Afghanistan. It is clear we have terrorist groups that are reorganizing themselves in a more international jihadist structure. And from 9/11 to today, there's something we have made a lot of headways on. It is the interconnections between intelligence services. And no matter interferences, no matter the differences that we can witness at the UN General Assembly, when it comes to the economy or any other topic, there is one topic that shows an actual partnership of all countries. It is the fight against terrorism. But now one needs to ask themselves whether these partnerships for terrorism are still strong as they used to be. As France as a country has been heavily criticized because it was in touch with Moscow and with Russian authorities because of the terrorist attacks that were perpetrated at the Crocus City Hall. But the French intelligence services did have elements that would be elements of proof to get the truth about the attacks. And we have decided, despite the strong differences, to say the least, that we have with Vladimir Putin, to give to the Russian Federation the information we had about the terrorist attack. And this is one very practical example for this roundtable of a partnership that we can have with increasing competition, terrorism, the fight against organized crime. President, Excellency, I was listening to you. Illegal fishing, that is an actual plight in the Northern Pacific, but also in the South Pacific. We will not be able to fight against illegal fishing and what is going on at sea if we do not work together at a very high level. Same goes for drug trafficking, armed trafficking, human trafficking. All that we do to fight against this needs to be protected. And let's not be selfish with technological jumps. Technology is being developed as we speak. And with the topic that was picked for today, artificial intelligence in the future will mean solutions. And for decision makers, but also for NGOs and firms, large companies, solutions and tools to be able to keep moving forward. So states, because of what is going on at the moment, should not hinder partnerships and show a lack of generosity. So I am speaking for France right now, but I'm pretty sure that my European counterparts in the room do agree. Our roadmap has not changed. Fighting against selfishness was my first point, but also fighting against a form of selfishness that would be getting back to the past, and that would be an actual disaster. Third risk, to keep working on the proposals, on the proposal that was given to us. Dear John, we do not have an obligation to get used to this increasing competition. Of course, I'm a French minister and very fond of General de Gaulle at that, who is speaking. But the alignment, the block theory, and a world that works that way is not unavoidable. We can avoid this situation, and I think that the Shangri-La dialogue is participating in this, but also with the conversations, the more private ones that are happening at all the floors in this hotel. But the Cold War is over, and now this idea of blocks that is moving towards the North Pacific. We are a country of the Pacific with our overseas territories. We are a member of the Security Council of the UN. We know for a fact that a bloc opposing themselves is not a solution. So it is our responsibility to find avenues and new pathways to fight against this logic. And I know that I have gone over time, but let's not try and replace what international organizations do. What ASEAN is doing is moving the right way, but diplomacy is not enough. We need to have very practical ways to make sure we keep these multilateral organizations alive, which is why our French Navy is involved with a lot of ships, a lot of people, a lot of technical steps. The same goes for humanitarian mechanisms, making sure that humanitarian law is abided by. In the Red Sea, we were mentioning maritime security from a very theoretical standpoint. We were maybe thinking about one given sea and realized that it happens in the Red Sea. And now Europe is looking at the Indo-Pacific region with war navies that are now have to act in self-defense to defend trade ships. If we want a better world, we need to make sure that international law is implemented. This also works for UNIFIL at the Lebanese border, where you have French forces working under a UN mandate where we are trying to de-escalate the situation. So if I were to sum up what I've just said, let's not accept any double standards. And this will be my conclusion. As for crisis management with increasingly serious crisis, the solution is in international law, and the fact that double standards are not to be accepted is absolutely key. You had a very good roundtable about nuclear proliferation. Our South Korean colleague will be taking the floor in a few minutes, and I think that nuclear powers have a special responsibility in the fight against proliferation. I'm saying so as a nuclear country. Our American and British friends know so. Our Russian and Chinese friends know so as well. They know that proliferation in North Korea is also a matter of concern. No double standards. In international law, I could have spoken about Gaza and a number of topics, but this is my contribution for the topic you have chosen for today.
So thank you very much for addressing at speed such a wide array of issues. There's so many things we could pick out from your remarks, but I thought it was interesting you essentially ended with a reflection on the lack of active arms control arrangements, whether in the North Atlantic Theater, the Greater Middle East Theater, or indeed the Indo-Pacific. That so-called Cold War habit of regular arms control has entirely dissipated from our lexicon and our activity, and reviving an arms control activity relevant to this region and indeed others, I think, will be one of the tasks for effective crisis management. With that, could I invite the Minister of National Defense of the Republic of Korea? Thank you very much, sir.
Good morning. This is the Minister of National Defense of the Republic of Korea. First of all, I'd like to extend my congratulations to the 21st anniversary of the Shangri-La Dialogue. It is my great pleasure to deliver my speech here at the internationally recognized Shangri-La Dialogue, the largest security conference in Asia. Allow me to offer my special congratulations and thanks to Executive Chairman Dr. John Chipman, Chief Executive Bastian Gigerich, and the staffs of the IISS, as well as to Senior Minister, His Excellency Teo Chi-hyun, Minister of Defense, His Excellency Ng Eng-hen, and government officials of the Republic of Singapore. Distinguished guests, recently, the international community is facing complex security crises. The sense of international security crisis is escalating as the war in Ukraine and the Israel-Hamas armed conflict become protracted. In addition, the unconventional security threats such as infectious disease, cyber terrorism, and climate change are deepening the uncertainties. The Indo-Pacific region is no exception to these situations. The intensification of strategic competition and escalation of regional security concerns are strengthening the convergence within blocs and exacerbating conflict composition. Furthermore, conflicts and disputes stemming from historical and geopolitical factors are weakening the will and motivations of the countries in the region to cooperate with each other. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, the situation on the Korean Peninsula is even graver. Despite the strong opposition from the international community, North Korea is continuing to advance its nuclear and missile capabilities. They are developing various missiles that can be used as nuclear delivery measures and have already had 12 missile launches this year alone. On top of that, they launched a rocket using ballistic missile technology that violates UN Security Council resolution, claiming that it was a reconnaissance satellite. North Korea's reckless development of nuclear and missile program, which can strike all the countries represented here, poses an existential threat to us. And as such, it is a direct challenge against the peace in the Indo-Pacific region and the world. Meanwhile, North Korea's development of nuclear and missile program is aggravating the human rights situation in North Korea. The Kim Jong-un regime, obsessed with the development of its nuclear and missile program, is aggravating the lives of its people who have long suffered from food shortage and economic crisis. The human rights crisis and nuclear and missile issues in North Korea all arise from the same root of continued dictatorship. And they are in an inseparable relationship like two sides of a coin. Distinguished guests, today, we see more evidence that the weapons used by Russia to attack Ukraine were illegally imported from North Korea. As a permanent member of the UN Security Council, Russia should serve as a guardian of global peace. Yet, they are receiving weapons from a regime that violates numerous UNSC resolutions. It is an unimaginable extreme self-contradiction and betrayal against the international community. Furthermore, North Korea is expected to accelerate the reinforcement of its military power with the money and technology it received in return for such arms trade. This reckless behavior not only degrades the authority of international rules and norms, but also exacerbates conflict and puts the entire region in danger. The arms trade between Russia and North Korea is a clear violation of UN Security Council resolution and must stop immediately as it severely threatens the peace on the Korean Peninsula and in the international community. Military cooperation between Russia and North Korea, brought by the war in Ukraine, is not only escalating tensions on the Korean Peninsula by advancing the nuclear and missile capabilities of North Korea, but also affecting the battlefield in Europe. This means that the crisis on Korean Peninsula is no longer a problem limited to the Korean Peninsula, but rather a problem for all of us. The complete denuclearization of North Korea, in accordance with the international non-proliferation regime, is an essential measure to protect the stability not only in the Korean Peninsula, but also of the entire world. All countries should condemn North Korea's illegal actions in one voice and faithfully implement UN Security Council resolutions agreed upon by the international community. A few days ago, North Korea dispersed over 260 waste balloons into our territory under the pretext of responding to Republic of Korea's civilian organizations' humanitarian aid balloons to the north. It is an unimaginably petty and low-grade behavior for a civilized nation. It constitutes inhumane behavior as well as clear and significant violation of the armistice agreement. I take this opportunity to strongly condemn such an action and urge for its immediate cessation. I request the international community's empathy and proactive support in addressing the North Korean issues. Distinguished guests, looking back, the international community has been on a journey since the end of World War II to prevent war caused by unilateral use of force and to protect peace and freedom. And at the heart of this journey was the establishment of the United Nations. The United Nations played a decisive role in founding a free democracy, the Republic of Korea, and in overcoming North Korean invasion, a crisis that was hanging by a thread. The first meaningful task the United Nations carried out for world peace was the approval of the Republic of Korea as a legitimate government and the establishment of the United Nations forces to defend its freedom. Thanks to such efforts from UN and the international community, the Republic of Korea became the one that was most successful among the countries that won independence after World War II in developing the economy and democracy. In this sense, the Republic of Korea today is an exemplary and living proof of cooperation and solidarity, which were the purpose of establishment of the United Nations. Distinguished guests, in December 2022, the ROC government announced the free, open, and prosperous Indo-Pacific strategy and expressed its will to actively promote rule-based international order. The rules-based international order must be protected from attempts to unilaterally change the status quo by force. It is a harmonious order which represents and respects each other's rights and pursues mutual interests. This order is the spirit that has been sought by UN since the establishment post-World War II, the one that has provided the basis of prosperity that the mankind never experienced before. Unfortunately, the rules-based international order is under threat and is falling apart in many parts of the world. The principle of conflict resolution in accordance with international law and through peaceful mechanisms is losing its authority in the face of threat and the use of force. The Republic of Korea will endeavor to protect the spirit of UN and the rules-based international order founded on that ground. We will cooperate with the international community to peacefully resolve North Korea's nuclear issues. Moreover, we will contribute to establishing Indo-Pacific region and furthermore, the creation of a global community in which many countries can develop together through rule-based cooperation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. And we all noticed your remarks about the way in which the DPRK was assisting Russia in its prosecution of war in Europe. When we come back to the question and answer period, you might wish to reflect on this particular question, which is that we have heard many reports that the DPRK is actually now operating on Russian territory, and it is actually launching some of its own artillery from Russian territory. So if you were able to confirm whether that is a fact, that will be very interesting. We have now about 12 people who've sought the floor. I'm going to take 6 or 7 in a group and then come back to the panel. First person to have caught my eye is Benedict Wirasana from Malaysia.
Good morning again, Benedict here from Malaysia. I'm going to come back to my concept of convergence that I brought up in the session earlier. So I think a lot of our panelists brought out about Gaza, and I know that convergence on bringing solutions to Gaza has been highly difficult in the past 8 months. Various views, various perspectives on the issue. So fast forward to today, I think what we can converge on is the need for an immediate ceasefire, and I hope we can converge on that in the first place. Now, my question is, what would a post-war Gaza look like? Can we converge on that? If yes, how can we then practically facilitate all parties to accept and to converge on how a post-war Gaza would look like? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now from South Korea, Chung-Min Lee.
Thank you very much, John. My question is to the South Korean Defense Minister. And excuse me for speaking speaking English to my Korean minister. I have 2 quick questions. According to South Korean law, we cannot export weapons to conflict zones, such as Ukraine. But we are selling weapons to, for example, NATO partners such as Poland. Is it time for South Korea to change the law so that we can help countries like Ukraine that is fighting for its very existence? And my second question, Mr. Minister, is as long as South Korea continues to rely on a US nuclear umbrella, we will not make our own nuclear weapons. But since 2006, North Korea's nuclear weapons have continued to grow. Do you believe that as Defense Minister, that at some point in time, South Korea should seriously consider whether it should have its own nuclear deterrent? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Myanmar, Min Zin.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, President Hodder. Thank you for bringing the attention of this dialogue to Myanmar issue. My question is about transnational organized crime. Since the military coup in Myanmar 2021, Myanmar suffers from transnational organized crime thriving. Myanmar becomes the largest opium producer, taking over Afghanistan. Myanmar also hosts lots of scam industry, pig butchering. It became tantamount to modern-day slavery. So my question is, the impact of this illicit economy, TOC, transnational organized crime, is beyond the border, all the way to the United States. So is it possible for the international community to mobilize to address this transnational organized crime as one convergence points of international interest, as well as possible entry point to address Myanmar conflict? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Vietnam, Han Nguyen.
Hi. Thank you for your presentation. So I have a question about how can U.S. allies and partners manage a situation in which strain in U.S. defense supply chain might undermine the military readiness of the United States and its allies and partners during crisis? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from the U.S., Bonnie Glaser.
Thank you, John. My question is for South Korean Minister Shin. How would you evaluate China's current role on the Korean Peninsula? And what proactive measures would you like to see Beijing take in order to promote denuclearization? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last question in this round, and then I'll give each of the panelists 2.5 minutes to address the questions that they were asked before going back for one more round. Irene Mia.
Thanks, John. I had a question on the rule-based order, international law, which we are seeing increasingly under attack, as also some of the panelists alluded to. My question is, can this be saved, or how does it need to be reformed in order to really be able to guide again conflict prevention and resolution?
Thank you very much. I think we'll go in the reverse order of their original remarks. So in a second, I'll ask Minister National Defense of Korea to start. Please, if you could address a few of the questions to you. Thank you, sir.
예, 감사합니다.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, broadly speaking, I believe I received 3 questions. First, Korea has a domestic law that prevents export of weapon system to countries in conflicts. Questions related to revision of this law. In order to revise this law, we need to build the public consensus within the country. So I cannot definitively directly answer this question, but of course it merits serious dialogue and discussion. Second question has to do with the nuclear development efforts, not just depending on the nuclear umbrella of the United States amid the increasing nuclear ambition of the North Korea. To this question, when we develop armed nuclear weapon, it means that we do not believe in NPT and non-proliferation treaty. So realistically, we will not go down to that path. Non-proliferation effort of the U.S. And we also place our trust in the non-proliferation regime in the world. The one single answer to resolution of a nuclear situation in North Korea is stronger alliance between South Korea and the United States. With that alliance, all the advantage of North Korea potentially gaining advantage from the development of a nuclear weapon will turn against them, so leading to a paradox of nuclear weapons. And the third question is China's role on denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula. As you know, DPRK, since 2003, China engaged in 6-party talks for denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula, but the outcome was not up to our expectation. For the stability and the nuclearization on the Korean Peninsula, we wish China would play a more proactive role.
Sébastien Lecornu.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I will answer 3 of the questions. Will we be able to save international law? It could be a topic for a conference of itself. But for us French citizens, we will be celebrating on the D-Day beaches and celebrate the liberation of our country, but also the whole continent. So let's not forget that international law was developed right after this very particular period of time. So it is interesting. Same goes for the war that has been the main principle in the history of humanity rather than peace. And yes, it is possible to preserve it, but we will have to go for even tougher political fight. And the paradox that we witnessed in 2022 is that one of the countries who participated in founding this international law decided to violate it, which is what is at the heart of all the debates we are having between the North and the South, and what is being called double standards. So law is to be transformed, law is to be improved. So is it possible? Yes, but this will call for a tough political fight. Quickly, the organized crime that is transnational, that could get some countries to find convergence. same goes for what I was saying about terrorism earlier. But what is new is that we need to make sure that behind this organized crime, we have to make sure that there are no states that are acting for them. So most of the organized crime organization in Africa are a way to fund some political systems, some political parties. I have to mention the Wagner Group, for example. On easier topics, as I was saying, for illegal fishing, let's not forget about multilateralism. Gaza, quick convergence, this is something we are all working towards. But actually, France has lost some French citizens during the 7th of October attack by Hamas in Israel. And France was amongst the first countries to state that self-defense for Israel was absolutely essential. But France was also the first country who invested a lot of means and tools to heal and to take care of people who were injured in Gaza, because the law is essential, and President Macron was amongst the first to ask for a fast break and then a ceasefire. We are working very hard with our counterparts, our American friends, because we know for a fact that what is going on in the Middle East can have repercussions for the rest of the planet. We all know this for a fact.
AI, artificial intelligence, in your remarks. There are now a number of commercial companies that are developing with AI instruments to predict geopolitical crises. There's one I know who claims that they were only about 36 hours off in predicting Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Can you imagine artificial intelligence being an aid in crisis management and conflict resolution, or could it be an unfortunate agent provocateur of conflict if it isn't properly used? What's your instinctive reaction to that thought?
Les deux.
Well, actually both. Whether you are working in the offensive or the defensive situation, AI for defense is going to be one of the deepest and the most violent breaks in the coming month and years. As much as the use of nuclear energy for military purposes between 1945 and the 1960s. Using AI for armament systems, for combat systems, but also for their protection, managing ministries with thousands and sometimes millions of people, and trying to find some efficiency, for example. So on a lot of topics, a lot of aspects, AI is going to be at the heart of strategies. And I'm not even mentioning the impact of AI on nuclear deterrence, on protection and defense systems, for satellites as well. So with all the challenges around the proliferation we were mentioning a few seconds ago, there will be prediction systems that already exist. They are a way to help army staff work, but they're just tools to be used by men, and men are going to have a framework for it. And I think they will be at the heart of the next Shangri-La dialogue, because there will mean solutions, but they will also mean new challenges, and they will reinforce the hybrid aspect of it.
Your response to the couple questions.
Well, I refer to Myanmar, a situation that I know well for about 30 years, following it. Know many people from Myanmar, been there many, many times, before the military regime, in the democracy spring with Suu Kyi, and since I've been following. And we all know it is one of the most complex state in Southeast Asia, with its multitude of ethnic groups, ethnic nationalities that for many, many years fought their own battles within their ethnic-based territories and so on. And we know from experience, Afghanistan and many others, when there is conflict, there is instability, there is lack of law and order breakdown, many people participate in illicit activities, drugs. In Myanmar, it's not only drugs, illegal logging, illegal export of jade, etc., etc. This is the first time in the history of the Myanmar that the military are not winning and will not win this conflict. They are losing. And the problem is whether NLD, the African armies, NUG, they will be capable of taking over and be an alternative. That's a question mark. Therefore, I have urged, I have spoken with the Secretary General of the UN, I have spoken with His Holiness the Pope in Rome, with President Macron in Paris, with David Cameron, with in Jakarta. Efforts have to be intensified to mediate this conflict. Otherwise, it gets out of control, spiral out of control. And then it will be far more difficult to bring back law and order and a solution. So because the military is very, very weak on the point of implosion, there is an incentive for them to talk. So someone has to bring all the parties together, no preconditions, start talking and work towards a resolution of the conflict. The best still document on the table is the ASEAN 5-point consensus. So that's my, we are not going to solve the drug problem, we are not going to solve the illicit without a reorganized Myanmar based on law and order, democracy, and so on.
Thank you very much. And going back to the floor for another round, could I please ask from Pakistan, Ahsan Guez?
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, sir. I'll just refer to the subject enhancing crisis management amid rising competition. And I would refer to the rising competition in Asia Pacific. So without going into much of the details, we see that a state or a certain set of states are being patronized or strategically enabled. Now, while that is good with respect to the strategic priorities and objectives of cooperation and for the common good for a particular region or for Asia Pacific, but it could have unintended second, third order effects when it comes to the balance of power in other regions, South Asia per se. So my question is to the panel that how this rising competition in Asia Pacific could prevent instability in South Asia, and what are the ways of looking at the crisis management should it happen in South Asia? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Vietnam, Bích Tran.
Thank you, Sir Chairman. And my question is for Dr. Ramos Horta. So I visited Timor-Leste 3 months ago, and it was indeed a beautiful country. So my question is about your country's membership to ASEAN. So ASEAN has around 1,500 meetings per year, and Timor-Leste has a small population and, of course, small numbers of government officials. So how do you plan to be an active member of ASEAN while balancing with that challenge? Thanks.
Thank you very much. And from the UK, Nigel Gould-Davies.
Thank you. A question for Minister Shin. You drew attention to how closely Russia and North Korea are now cooperating. The value of that cooperation for Russia is clear to us in Europe. Could you offer a view about how much North Korea is benefiting from this, what it's getting from Russia, and what the consequences for North Koreans' capabilities will be? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from Indonesia, Andreas Aditya Salim.
Thank you, sir, for the opportunity. Excellencies, allow me to draw your attention to the biggest crisis that we are facing at the moment, which is climate change. According to the IPCC, its special report on ocean, there are 5 big phenomena, which is density stratification, deoxygenation, ocean acidification, weakening of ocean current and circulation, also the marine heat wave, that will bring us to the annihilation of world marine resources, and that's where the crisis will happen. And I would like to hear your views on when the situation where we have a depleting marine resources by the climate change, by the overfishing, while the world population is keep increasing, what kind of governance structure, system, cooperations to handle this crisis? Thank you.
Thank you. And from Japan, the Governor of JBIC, Tadashi Maeda.
Thank you, John. My question is going to the Korean Defense Minister. Earlier this week, the President Yoon Suk-yeol hosted the Trilateral Summit meeting among the 3 countries, Korea, Japan, and China. And I really highly appreciate this, but on Korean Peninsula, there are no words have been included in joint statement on denuclearization of North Korea. And a couple of weeks before this event, Russian President Vladimir Putin paid a visit to China, and there's some warmly received by President Xi Jinping. How do you evaluate those kind of a series of actions, the impact on the Russia-North Korea military cooperation? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And from Laos, Ud Stiparisis.
Thank you for giving the floor to me. I'll ask the question from my simple mind here. Right now, apart from the regional effect, a collective effort in the crisis prevention, crisis management and the prevention through the diplomatic type ASEAN negotiation with China on the Code of Conduct in South China Sea is one of the examples. Recently, our region has witnessed there have been a number of unilateral security arrangements established, and it seems like the number of the establishments seem to grow in our region. So the question is, do you consider such security arrangement establishment as the good option for the crisis management and the prevention? Thank you.
Thank you. And from Cambodia, Mangut Ki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is addressed directly to President of Timor-Leste. While ASEAN has offered a room or opportunity to grow, it also has its own trouble, ranging from the conflict in Myanmar to the deteriorating of ASEAN centrality and the long-standing conflict in the South China Sea dispute. With all this in mind, do you still think that joining ASEAN still provide the expected upside potential or incentive for the Timor-Leste? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from the UK, Robert Ward.
Thank you, John. One of the significant geopolitical, a question for Minister Shin. One of the significant geopolitical shifts since Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been the warming of relations between South Korea and Japan. Where do you think South Korea and Japan can work most effectively together to expand security cooperation in East Asia? And is there a role for ROK-Japan security cooperation in the broader Indo-Pacific and beyond? Thank you.
Thank you. And from India, Darshana Bose. Darshana?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Dr. Chipman. This question is to Defense Minister from France. Could you share your thoughts on what is the likely way forward on New Caledonia? You're in the region, and given there seems to be a big difference in perception between Paris and pro-independence leaders, and Pacific Island Forum seems to have offered support towards New Caledonia. Wanted to hear your thoughts on what do you think is going to be likely next steps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. From Australia, Stephen Forshaw.
Thank you, Sir John, and can I start just congratulating you on your KCMG since we last came together at this forum. Could I ask the panel, referring to Minister Lecornu's remarks offering French aid to Papua New Guinea after the tragic landslide, for which we're very grateful, I wanted to pick up on the point about the importance of civil defence and disaster assistance for defence forces. The role of defence forces is constantly evolving, much as expected of our forces, but particularly with climate change and particularly with this region, perhaps a greater emphasis in future is going to be needed to be paid on humanitarian assistance and civil defence. And I'd like to hear from the panel your expectations and how the role of military forces is evolving to be able to respond to those significant threats, given the capabilities required are often going to be only able to be brought to the field by defence forces and military agencies.
Thank you very much. And from the Financial Times, Dimitri Sevastopoulou. Dimitri.
Thank you, John. Robert actually stole part of my question, which was for Minister Shin. So I'd just like to add to his question and say, Japan has signed reciprocal access agreements to allow joint training and exercises with the UK, with Australia, and it's currently negotiating one with Manila. What are the prospects for Japan and South Korea to start thinking about an RAA?
And Shu Roy.
Thank you. My question is pretty simple. In these last 6 months, North Korea has launched nearly a dozen missiles of various kinds. So if I were to say that AI was able to predict every single one of them, and if you had that knowledge 2 weeks in advance, would that make a difference?
Thank you very much. Antoine Levesque.
Thank you, John. I want to ask the panel, and particularly the defense ministers, if intelligence sharing can enhance crisis management. I asked a question about this to the Indo-PACOM commander yesterday, and a discussion followed. So I want to ask, particularly if real-time intelligence sharing can enhance or undermine crisis management. Thank you.
And from Japan, Akito Horiyuki.
Thank you very much. My question is also to Defense Minister Shin, and to follow-up question about the possible nuclear option by South Korea. So I understand that the South Korean government respect and persist with the NPT regime. But according to a recent poll, more than 70% of Korean public believe that nuclear option would be necessary. So my question is, how do you envision the scenario under which ROK will be forced to pursue its own nuclear option? And what would be the implication of a possible second term of Trump administration in the US?
Good. And some tactical warning to the panel. We've got 2 more questions to go through. Adi Piamachi from Indonesia.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for President Ramos Horta. So how do you position Timor-Leste in the international order? Thank you.
And then I'm able to get 2 more questions and close with that. From Myanmar, Nguyen Sant Aung. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for giving me the floor. My question is about the use of AI by the non-state actor who can also be the proxy strategy implied or imposed by the assertive or aggressive states. So my question direct to the French minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, from the Philippines, Justin Pakistan.
Thank you, Sir John. This is a question for Minister Shin of Korea. And a practical one. How do we conduct crisis management with countries that don't instinctively resort to mechanisms such as these or are playing hardball? North Korea has had a habit of quickly dismantling diplomatic channels whenever tensions are high. In the Philippine case, we could say the same for China, which does not answer Coast Guard to Coast Guard hotlines in recent months. What conditions make obstinate countries more amenable to dialogue? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've got 12 minutes left. We have to divide the time in perfect proportions. So Mr. Shin gets 4 minutes, and Sébastien Lecontenu and the President get 3 each, given the amount of questions Mr. Shin received. So, Minister of Korea, please.
제가 질문이
Yes, I recall that I have received 6 questions. I will try to answer them in brief. First question has to do with cooperation between North Korea and Russia. As you are well aware, they have transferred 10,000 containers between them. North Korea exported missiles and artilleries, and in return they receive oil and food and military technology. North Korea has received them from Russia. That's our assumption. Particularly for satellite, military reconnaissance-related satellite technologies, what they have received mainly as part of military technology transfer. If this continues, the conventional capability of North Korea can be significantly improved, and that's imminent risk that we face, and the United States and Korea is putting together measures to counter this. Second question is trilateral summit between China, Japan, and South Korea, and we are very positively receiving the outcome. And on the topic of North Korean denuclearization, the joint statement did not mention the topic, and this is regretful for us. And we call for more proactive stance from China. Third question is China, Russia, and North Korea collaborative mechanism, and we have grave concern, rules-based international order, and we are against unilateral use of force, and these principles are undermined by Russia. And if these 3 countries collaborate, if they collaborate to undermine the world peace, it will be a great outcome and consequences that I hope it will not happen. And third question, and the next question has to do with the collaboration between Japan and South Korea. And we have very close relations, and our economic interdependence and win-win structure for our economies stand there for a long time. And partnership between Japan and South Korea is not a matter of choice, but a must. And collaboration between these 2 countries will expand beyond Indo-Pacific region to the world, because I believe so, because we have shared common interest for security and economic values. So I believe South Korean government is very positive on expanding our collaboration beyond Indo-Pacific region. The next question was RAA agreement. So we do not have immediate review of the option, but it, of course, merits long and medium-term review of the idea. Fifth question is potential nuclear option, and you mentioned different scenarios. And these scenarios will predicate that there will not be any alliance between the US and South Korea will be completely isolated, and the scenario is completely unrealistic. So I believe the option is not considerable. And allies and minister of ally country will not mention any topic that was asked with the last question, so I will not answer that question. And regarding stubborn countries and inviting them to dialogue for crisis management, how are we to allure them and welcome them to conversation? That is the most difficult question, and it is a realm of God. But if I offer my insight, we have to be patient, and we need to persuade them that abiding by the international order is more advantageous to them rather than not abiding by them, and their perception would change. And we need patience.
Merci beaucoup, John.
Thank you, John. 3 questions. So quickly, the first one, artificial intelligence for non-state actors. And this works also for cyber technologies other technologies, the proliferation of these conventional technologies is witnessed with non-state actors. So far, we've witnessed organized terrorism that has been armed with relatively weak armaments, mass killings, or individual killings, but never have they used dirty weapons, chemical weapons, or massive cyber attacks. But this is something we need to be prepared for, because attacking one hospital is one thing, but attacking 200 hospitals at the same time for services to be actually interrupted on the same day in a number of hospitals is a whole new form of terrorism. So far, we've been able to control these technologies, whether with the state or in a commercial relationship with companies, but we can see that increasingly states will give to proxies some elements of technology. I'm not talking about terrorism here, but about the idea of proxies, how organized they are when they can produce complex missiles in the Middle East, something that was absolutely inconceivable 20 years ago. So these technologies do not belong to the sovereignty of a state only anymore. This is something we need to understand, and they will probably be proliferating. I think this is something, a word we can use from another one. I've been asked about climate change twice, including by our Australian friends. We are witnessing the effects of climate change, and we already have to tackle them. So beyond all the efforts we are making to mitigate the impact in the future, actually, South Pacific is the continent that in the future will have to manage the most and increasingly violent climate disaster and phenomena. And we know this because our French population in the Pacific region are already suffering from this. This is something we tackled a lot as the SPDMM, the South Pacific Defense Ministers meeting we had in New Caledonia in December. Richard Marles was there, by the way. We know that our systems are not working that well together. We know that we manage one crisis at a time well, but when they're simultaneous, this is proving harder. And faced with today's reality, it is becoming increasingly normal to manage several crises at a time. Third point, new technologies are not developing fast enough to help our island country friends. Observation satellites for weather prediction, but also for protection and fight against illegal fishing should be a way to go further. Drones, of course, are a way to improve civil security. And in a much more basic way, for the head of Airbus, Guillaume Faury, in this water continent, maritime and air interconnection are central, and same goes for crisis management. We have to be able to fly elements for civil security. The agreements we have between countries are very good, but we need to have actual means to be able to implement them. New Caledonia is a territory that I do know very well. I've been there about 10 times. It is a territory that became French after colonization. But in an extraordinary way, France approved a decolonization plan through several steps in the 1980s and the 1990s. In the 1990s, we found a way to find a solution to this issue, both for the political aspects and for the living together aspects. Not one referendum was organized, but three were organized that asked some electors to give their opinions on the independence, twice with high turnover rates and with a very low one the last time. The electors that were called to vote refused the independence. New Caledonia has changed a lot. 2 provinces out of 3 are managed by independentists. About 20 town halls are on the independentist hands. The independentists have won the elections, and we have members of the Senate in Paris, the higher house, who are independentists. We are not in a colonial system anymore, and the Republic was up to the promises it made. Today we are witnessing violence. In a lot of countries it is the same. We have a young generation that is bored, that has problems with drugs, with alcohol, and that are sometimes manipulated by other countries who are hidden in the world, and they are fostering violence to try and get independence through a different way. It is quite spectacular and it has to be condemned. All of you should condemn what is going on in New Caledonia at the moment, because they are not part of our system of value, and I do not know any country amongst you, ladies and gentlemen, who are not experiencing any social or political domestic issues. So please be very careful in considering ours. Thank you.
On to Timor-Leste ASEAN membership, our capabilities, we have been evaluated numerous times under the 3 pillars of ASEAN. And the conclusion is we are very much on the right track to join ASEAN. We have already participated in all the summits and the ministerial working groups, expert level in every field. So we don't really have a much problem in meeting the challenges of meetings, which we know more than 1,000 meetings. But we're used to it. There are hundreds of UN meetings throughout the year, and we are members of other organizations like CPLP, Portuguese-speaking communities. We are members, founder of the Fragile States. We are active in the LDCs, in the Small Island Development States. So we are used to that. ASEAN is actually one of the most effective organizations in the world. And if you look around the world, the African Union progressed enormously over the last 30, 40 years. But African continent, African Union face also extraordinary challenges of conflict, wars, and all kinds. Latin America is the same. The Organization of American States face huge problems. The European Union, one even pull out, and there's a risk of, so nothing new in terms of disagreements and sometimes blockage in organizations. So we don't have any difficulties with that. We will contribute to the extent that we can. We call upon to strengthen ASEAN, to help ASEAN defending ASEAN centrality in issues of the region like South China Sea, Myanmar, and so on. We will be guided by the more experienced leaders of ASEAN, the more elder statesmen, and together I believe that we can have a small contribution to a better region, I think.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And can you join me, please, in thanking our 3 very distinguished panelists for leading such a wide-ranging debate. You all deserve a coffee break, and please come back at 11:30 for the 3rd plenary. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.